The late bridesmaid. The sun cast its warm glow over the rolling hills of Rosewood Estate, a luxurious countryside venue adorned for the wedding of the year. The scent of blooming roses mingled with the crisp freshness of the early afternoon, creating an atmosphere of serene celebration. Guests dressed in elegant attire milled about, their laughter and conversations echoing softly under the sprawling oak trees. Logan Mitchell stood apart from the crowd, leaning casually against the railing of a stone terrace overlooking the estate's pristine gardens. In his perfectly tailored suit, with his dark hair impeccably styled, he exuded the confident air of a man who knew his place in the world. At 34, Logan was not only a self-made millionaire, but also one of the most eligible bachelors in the city. Yet, as the day unfolded, his sharp blue eyes seemed more focused on the horizon than on the festivities. It wasn't that Logan didn't care for the occasion. His closest friend, Ethan Carver, was marrying his high school sweetheart, Lily, a union that epitomized everything Logan admired about love and loyalty. But the wedding, as beautiful as it was, brought a tinge of melancholy for Logan. While he thrived in the business world, his personal life was far less fulfilling. Relationships had become fleeting, their spark extinguished by the demands of his career. Love, it seemed, was something meant for others. Logan's reflective mood was interrupted by a flurry of whispers among the crowd. Heads turned toward the far end of the garden path, where a figure hurriedly made her way toward the ceremony. She was late, conspicuously so, and her entrance shattered the perfection of the day's meticulous timing. Sophia Hayes, a bridesmaid, had finally arrived. Her cheeks were flushed, her hair slightly undone, and her soft blue dress was crinkled from the hurried drive. She clutched her bouquet with trembling hands, trying to steady herself as she navigated through the maze of curious stares. Sophia knew she was making an entrance she'd rather avoid, but a flat tire on the winding country road had left her with no choice but to rush. When Logan's gaze landed on her, he found himself captivated. It wasn't just her beauty, though she was striking, with her auburn hair catching the sunlight like fire. It was something deeper, the way her eyes darted nervously yet carried a glimmer of resolve. She moved with a grace that suggested she was more than the sum of her disheveled appearance. Sophia froze briefly as her eyes locked with Logan's. The moment stretched as if time itself had paused to acknowledge the weight of their unspoken connection. She quickly looked away, but the impression she left on Logan was indelible. Throughout the ceremony, Logan's thoughts were consumed by the mysterious latecomer. He discreetly watched her interact with the bridal party. Her laughter was genuine, though tinged with restraint, and her movements were poised yet guarded. She seemed at ease, yet carried an invisible weight. Later, at the reception, Logan found himself searching for an opportunity to approach her. When the soft chords of a string quartet filled the air, and couples took to the dance floor, he saw his chance. Sophia stood alone near the edge of the room, her expression distant as she sipped a glass of champagne. Logan strode toward her, his confidence unwavering. "Excuse me," he said, his deep voice smooth but laced with curiosity. "Would you grant me the honor of a dance?" Sophia looked up, startled by the request. For a moment, she hesitated, but something in Logan's gaze, a sincerity she couldn't quite place, made her relent. She placed her hand in his, allowing him to lead her to the floor. As they danced, their conversation began tentatively, like strangers feeling out common ground. Logan spoke of the beauty of the estate, the happiness of their friends, and the rarity of such tranquil moments in his busy life. Sophia listened politely but offered little about herself. When he asked about her connection to the bride, her answers were vague, her tone deflective. Despite her guardedness, Logan felt an inexplicable pull toward her. She was a puzzle, a blend of warmth and distance, vulnerability and strength. The more she evaded his questions, the more determined he became to uncover her story. As the evening waned and the guests began to disperse, Logan found himself standing on the terrace again, his gaze lingering on Sophia as she prepared to leave. She seemed hesitant, as if she, too, felt the weight of their encounter but wasn't ready to confront it. Logan decided then and there that he wouldn't let this be the last time they crossed paths. There was something about Sophia Hayes, something that resonated with the parts of him he rarely let surface. He resolved to find out what it was, even if it meant stepping into a world far removed from his own. Unbeknownst to Logan, Sophia carried secrets she wasn't ready to share. Secrets that would soon challenge the connection forming between them and force them both to confront truths they'd rather keep buried. Whispers of the past. The morning after the wedding, Logan sat on the terrace of his hotel suite, a steaming cup of coffee in hand. The gentle rustle of the vineyard's leaves filled the air as the sun began to warm the rolling hills. The estate was still, the celebratory buzz of the previous evening replaced by the quiet hum of nature. But Logan's mind was anything but serene. He leaned back in his chair, replaying every detail of his brief encounter with Sophia. Her laughter, her reserved answers, the way her gaze seemed to hold layers of untold stories. It all intrigued him. Logan wasn't used to people being an enigma. His business acumen had taught him to read people quickly, to see through the facades they built. But Sophia Hayes was a puzzle he couldn't decipher, and that intrigued him more than it should have. The faint buzz of his phone broke his reverie. Ethan's name flashed on the screen, and Logan answered with a quick swipe. "Morning," Ethan said, his tone chipper despite the early hour. "You're not still brooding over the wedding, are you?" Logan chuckled, knowing Ethan's teasing was an attempt to lighten the mood. "Not brooding. Reflecting." "Sure you are." There was a pause, and Ethan's voice softened. "You seemed distracted last night. Everything okay?" "Yeah, just met someone. One of Lily's bridesmaids." "Sophia?" Ethan asked, his voice sharpening with curiosity. "She's a good friend of Lily's, but complicated." Logan leaned forward, his interest piqued. "What do you mean?" Ethan hesitated. "Look, I don't know the full story, but Lily once mentioned Sophia's been through a lot. Family stuff, mostly. She's fiercely private, though, so if you're thinking of pursuing something, tread lightly." Logan frowned. He wasn't one to push where he wasn't wanted, but the memory of Sophia's guarded expression nagged at him. "Noted. Thanks, Ethan." After the call ended, Logan sat in silence, turning Ethan's words over in his mind. He was a man of action, but this wasn't a business deal or a negotiation. Sophia wasn't someone he could approach with his usual strategies. If he wanted to know her story, he'd have to earn her trust. Meanwhile, Sophia stood in the small library of the estate, running her fingers over the spines of well-worn books. The sunlight streaming through the tall windows painted the room in golden hues, but the warmth did little to soothe the storm inside her. She'd spent the morning avoiding the other guests, her nerves still frayed from the wedding. Her encounter with Logan had left her unsettled. She had seen men like him before, confident, self-assured, and accustomed to getting what they wanted. But there was something about Logan that felt different. He wasn't just curious about her. He seemed genuinely interested, and that terrified her. Sophia pulled a book from the shelf and opened it, letting the familiar scent of aged pages calm her. She had always sought solace in books, finding comfort in stories that weren't her own. But the peace was short-lived. A shadow fell across her, and she looked up to see Logan standing in the doorway. "Am I interrupting?" he asked, his voice low and unassuming. Sophia quickly composed herself, closing the book and setting it back on the shelf. "Not at all. Just enjoying some quiet." Logan stepped into the room, his movements measured. He didn't want to spook her, but he also wasn't going to let her slip away again. "It's a beautiful library," he said, glancing around. "But I have a feeling you're not hiding here just to admire the books." Sophia stiffened, her defenses rising. "What makes you think I'm hiding?" Logan smiled, his expression disarming. "Call it a hunch." She crossed her arms, her gaze wary. "If you came here to dig into my life, don't bother. There's nothing to find." "I don't believe that," Logan said simply. "But I'm not here to pry. I just wanted to say goodbye before I head back to the city." Sophia blinked, caught off guard by his honesty. "You're leaving." He nodded, slipping his hands into his pockets. "Business calls. But I couldn't leave without seeing you again." Her heart skipped a beat, but she quickly tamped down the flutter of emotion. "Well, you've seen me. Safe travels." Logan chuckled softly, his blue eyes meeting hers. "You're good at keeping people at a distance, Sophia. But for what it's worth, I hope our paths cross again." Without waiting for a reply, he turned and walked away, leaving her standing in the quiet library, her emotions a tangled mess. Over the next few days, Logan threw himself back into his work, but his thoughts kept drifting to Sophia, her guarded demeanor, the flashes of vulnerability she tried to hide. It all lingered in his mind. He found himself searching for excuses to call Ethan, hoping for some scrap of information about her. But he stopped himself. He didn't want to overstep. Sophia, meanwhile, returned to her life in the small coastal town she called home. She managed an art gallery tucked into a quiet corner of the main street, a place where she could lose herself in creativity and avoid the prying eyes of the world. The gallery was her sanctuary, a reminder that she could build something beautiful even after her family's name had been dragged through the mud. But Logan's presence lingered, no matter how hard she tried to push it away. She thought of his steady gaze, his quiet persistence, and the way he had seen through her walls without even trying. It was both maddening and oddly comforting. One evening, as Sophia closed the gallery for the night, her phone buzzed. She hesitated before picking it up, her breath hitching when she saw the message. "I haven't forgotten about you, Sophia. Let me know when you're ready to talk." Her fingers hovered over the screen, her mind racing. Logan's words were simple, but they carried a weight that unnerved her. He wasn't giving up, and she wasn't sure if that scared her or gave her hope. Sophia locked her phone and leaned against the counter, her heart pounding. She had spent years running from her past, building walls so high that no one could climb them. But Logan wasn't just climbing, he was breaking them down. For the first time in years, Sophia found herself wondering what it might feel like to let someone in. But with that thought came fear, the fear that her secrets, if revealed, would send Logan running and leave her more broken than before. As the waves crashed against the shore outside her apartment, Sophia made a decision. She would respond to Logan's message. But what she told him, and how much she revealed, remained to be seen. Cracks in the armor. Sophia paced her small apartment, her phone clutched tightly in her hand. The screen was still lit with Logan's message, his words etched into her mind. "I haven't forgotten about you, Sophia. Let me know when you're ready to talk." It was simple, yet it carried a persistence that she couldn't ignore. She had spent years mastering the art of deflection, the skill of steering conversations away from her past and the shadows it cast over her life. But Logan's unwavering determination had left a crack in her carefully constructed armor, and she wasn't sure how to repair it. Her thumb hovered over the reply button, a dozen different responses flashing through her mind. She could brush him off, pretend she had no interest, or even block his number altogether. But something stopped her, something she couldn't quite name. Finally, with a deep breath, she typed her reply. "If you're serious about talking, meet me at Seaside Cafe tomorrow at 10 a.m. She hit send before she could second-guess herself and immediately regretted it. What was she thinking, inviting Logan into her world? He was charming, persistent, and far too good at getting under her skin. The next morning, Sophia arrived at the cafe early. The small seaside establishment was her favorite spot, its cozy interior and oceanfront view offering a sense of peace she rarely found elsewhere. She took a seat near the window, the salty breeze drifting in through the open doors. Logan arrived 10 minutes later, his confident stride drawing the attention of a few patrons as he entered. He spotted her instantly and made his way to the table, his smile warm but not overbearing. "Good morning," he said, pulling out a chair. Sophia nodded, her hands gripping her coffee cup. "Morning." Their conversation began tentatively, both of them testing the waters. Logan asked about the gallery, and Sophia spoke about her work with a passion she rarely shared. But as the minutes passed, Logan gently steered the conversation toward her life outside the gallery. "I can tell you love what you do," he said, his blue eyes steady on hers. "But I get the feeling there's more to your story." Sophia's grip on her cup tightened. "Everyone has a story, Logan. Some just aren't meant to be shared." "I get that," he said. "But I also know that keeping things bottled up doesn't make them go away." His words struck a nerve, and Sophia looked away, her gaze falling on the waves crashing against the shore. She wanted to tell him to stop, to let her be, but part of her was tired of carrying the weight alone. "You don't know what you're asking," she said softly. "You don't know what it's like to have your life dissected, your name dragged through the mud." Logan leaned forward, his voice gentle but firm. "Then tell me. Help me understand." Sophia hesitated, the urge to push him away warring with the desire to let someone in. Finally, she spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. "My father was Henry Hayes." Logan frowned, the name sparking recognition. "The financier." She nodded, her expression guarded. "The same. He built an empire on lies and greed. When it all came crashing down, so did we. The media didn't just go after him. They went after all of us. I lost everything. My reputation, my career, my friends. That's why I came here, to start over. And now you know why I keep people at arm's length." Logan was silent for a moment, processing her words. He had heard about Henry Hayes' downfall, the scandal that had rocked the financial world. But he hadn't considered the collateral damage, the lives left in ruins. "You didn't do anything wrong," he said finally. "Your father's actions don't define you. Try telling that to the rest of the world." Sophia replied bitterly. "People don't care about the truth. They care about headlines." Logan reached across the table, his hand covering hers. "Then we'll change the story." Sophia pulled her hand back, shaking her head. "You don't understand. The moment people find out about us, about you, it'll start all over again. They'll dig into your life, your business. I won't let that happen." Logan's jaw tightened, his determination evident. "I've dealt with the media before. They don't scare me." "They should," Sophia said, her voice trembling. "You don't know how relentless they can be." For a moment, neither of them spoke, the weight of her confession hanging heavily between them. Finally, Logan leaned back in his chair, his expression softening. "I'm not walking away, Sophia. You're not your father's mistakes, and I'm not going to let the past dictate our future." Sophia wanted to believe him. She wanted to believe that someone could see her for who she really was, not the shadow of her father's sins. But the scars of her past ran deep, and trusting Logan felt like stepping onto thin ice. "I need time," she said finally, "to figure this out." Logan nodded, his gaze unwavering. "Take all the time you need. I'm not going anywhere." Over the next few days, Sophia threw herself into her work, trying to regain her footing. She spent hours in the gallery, curating new exhibits and losing herself in the vibrant colors of the paintings she loved. But no matter how hard she tried, Logan's words lingered in her mind. Meanwhile, Logan began his own search for answers. He didn't pry into Sophia's past. He respected her boundaries. But he delved into the world of public relations, determined to find a way to protect her from the media's prying eyes. He reached out to a trusted friend, an experienced PR consultant, and began laying the groundwork for a plan. But just as he started to make progress, the first crack appeared. A tabloid article surfaced, its headline bold and sensational. "Sophia Hayes spotted with tech mogul Logan Mitchell. A scandal brewing." The accompanying photo, taken at Ethan and Lily's wedding, showed Logan and Sophia on the dance floor, their connection unmistakable. It was only a matter of time before the story gained traction. When Sophia saw the article, her heart sank. She had feared this moment, and now it was here. The question was, how would they face it, together or apart? The storm breaks. Sophia stared at the screen of her phone. the tabloid article glaring back at her like an accusation. The photo of her and Logan, mid-dance, their faces close, their connection palpable, was splashed across the page, accompanied by speculative commentary that cut her to the core. The article dredged up her father's scandal, painting her as the daughter of disgrace and Logan as her unwitting target. Her hands trembled as she set the phone down on the counter of the gallery. She had worked so hard to escape this kind of attention, to rebuild her life away from the shadow of her father's mistakes. And now, with one photograph, it felt like it was all unraveling. The chime of the gallery's door startled her. She turned to see Logan stepping inside, his expression calm, but his jaw set in determination. He carried a newspaper folded under his arm, the same headline glaring from its front page. "I saw it," he said, his voice steady as he approached her. Sophia's heart sank. "I told you this would happen," she said, her voice trembling. "This is why I keep people at a distance, because the moment they get close, this is what they get: scrutiny, headlines, their name dragged through the mud." Logan placed the newspaper on the counter and met her gaze. "This isn't your fault, Sophia." She shook her head, anger and frustration bubbling to the surface. "Of course it is. My name is poison, Logan. Everything I touch turns into a headline. And now, because of me, they'll come after you too." "Let them," Logan said firmly. "I'm not afraid of the media." "You should be," Sophia shot back. "You don't understand how ruthless they can be. They'll twist everything. They'll drag your company into this, your employees, your entire life." Logan stepped closer, his voice softening, but losing none of its resolve. "You're right. I don't understand it, not the way you do. But I'm not going to run because of a headline. I care about you, Sophia. And I'm not going to let some tabloid scare me off." Sophia's defenses wavered, her anger giving way to the fear beneath it. "You think you can handle this, but you don't know what it's like to be hunted by the press, to have every detail of your life turned into a spectacle." "Then help me understand," Logan said, his gaze unwavering. "Show me what you're afraid of, and we'll face it together." Sophia turned away, her arms crossed tightly over her chest. She wanted to believe him, to trust that he wouldn't abandon her when things got hard. But the scars of her past told her otherwise. Every time she had let someone in, they had left the moment her father's name surfaced. "I need time," she said finally, her voice barely above a whisper. Logan nodded, his expression softening. "Take all the time you need. But know this, I'm not going anywhere." The next few days were a whirlwind. The article gained traction, and soon more outlets picked up the story. Speculation swirled about Sophia's past, her connection to Logan, and whether she was using him to rehabilitate her image. Reporters began showing up outside her gallery, their cameras poised and their questions invasive. Sophia kept the gallery closed, retreating into the safety of her apartment. She spent hours pacing the small space, her mind racing with worst-case scenarios. She had tried so hard to start over, and now it felt like the world was determined to drag her back into the chaos. Logan, meanwhile, was preparing for battle. He reached out to his public relations team, instructing them to manage the growing media frenzy. But he knew that containing the story wasn't enough. If he and Sophia were going to move forward, they needed to take control of the narrative. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon and painted the town in shades of gold and pink, Logan called Sophia. "I have an idea," he said, his voice steady. "But I need you to trust me." Sophia hesitated. "Logan, I don't think." "Hear me out," he interrupted gently. "We're letting them control the story right now. That's why it feels overwhelming. But if we're honest, if we own our narrative, they won't have anything to twist." Sophia sighed, her shoulders sagging under the weight of her doubt. "You make it sound so simple." "It's not simple," Logan admitted, "but it's necessary. We don't have to give them everything, just enough to show them who you really are." Sophia was silent for a moment, her mind racing. She had spent years hiding, afraid of what the world would think if they saw her for who she was. But maybe Logan was right. Maybe the only way to move forward was to stop running. "Okay," she said finally. "What's the plan?" 2 days later, Logan and Sophia stood in the conference room of his company's headquarters. The room was bright and modern, its glass walls offering a sweeping view of the city skyline. A small group of trusted reporters had been invited to a press briefing, and the atmosphere buzzed with anticipation. Sophia's hands trembled as she adjusted her blouse, her nerves threatening to overwhelm her. Logan placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder, his touch grounding her. "You've got this," he said softly. "Just speak from the heart." She nodded, taking a deep breath as they stepped up to the podium together. The reporters fell silent, their pens poised and their cameras rolling. Logan spoke first, his voice calm and commanding. He addressed the rumors, dismissing the sensationalism and emphasizing the importance of transparency. Then he turned to Sophia, his gaze steady and encouraging. Sophia took a deep breath and stepped forward. Her voice wavered at first, but she quickly found her rhythm, speaking openly about her past, her father's scandal, and the impact it had on her life. She didn't shy away from the pain or the mistakes, but she also shared her journey of rebuilding and the person she had become. "I am not my father's actions," she said, her voice strong despite the emotion in her eyes. "And I refuse to let my past define my future." The room was silent for a moment before breaking into applause. Reporters fired questions, but Logan gently guided Sophia away, signaling the end of the briefing. As they stepped into the quiet hallway, Sophia exhaled a shaky breath. "Do you think it worked?" Logan smiled, his confidence unwavering. "It's a start. But no matter what happens next, we'll face it together." For the first time in years, Sophia felt a glimmer of hope. The road ahead wouldn't be easy, but with Logan by her side, she believed she could navigate the storm. The cost of truth. The aftermath of the press briefing was immediate and chaotic. News outlets picked up Sophia's story, dissecting her every word. Some praised her courage, while others questioned her motives. The comment sections were a battlefield of opinions, each one dragging her name through another layer of scrutiny. Sophia sat in her small apartment, scrolling through article after article. The initial relief she had felt after the press briefing quickly evaporated as the reality of public exposure set in. Her phone buzzed incessantly with calls, texts, and emails, some supportive, some invasive. Logan had assured her they had taken control of the narrative, but it didn't feel that way. It felt like she had given the world another reason to watch her every move, to judge her every decision. A sharp knock on her door startled her. She hesitated, her heart pounding, before peeking through the peephole. Logan stood on the other side, his face a mixture of concern and determination. She opened the door, stepping aside to let him in. "You didn't have to come," she said, her voice soft. Logan walked in and set a paper bag on her kitchen counter. "I brought dinner. Thought you might need a break from everything." Sophia offered a small smile, grateful for his thoughtfulness. "Thank you." As they sat down to eat, the tension in the room was palpable. Logan broke the silence. "I know it's overwhelming, but you did the right thing, Sophia. You told your story on your terms." Sophia sighed, pushing her food around her plate. "It doesn't feel like it. The articles, the comments, it's like I gave them more ammunition." "You gave them the truth," Logan countered. "That's more powerful than anything they can throw at you." Sophia looked up at him, her eyes filled with doubt. "And what about you? They're starting to target you now, questioning your motives. Aren't you worried about what this will do to your reputation, your company?" Logan leaned back in his chair, his gaze steady. "I told you before, I don't care about the headlines. What matters is that we face this together." Sophia wanted to believe him, but the fear of dragging him down with her was a weight she couldn't shake. "I just don't want to be the reason you lose everything." Logan reached across the table, taking her hand in his. "The only way I lose is if I let fear control my life. And I'm not about to let that happen. Not with you. Despite Logan's reassurances, the fallout from the press briefing continued to grow. Sophia's name trended on social media, with hashtags ranging from supportive to scathing. Paparazzi began lurking outside her gallery, snapping photos of anyone who entered or left. Logan wasn't spared either. His business associates and board members began voicing concerns about the potential impact on the company's image. At first, Logan dismissed their worries, confident in his ability to weather the storm. But as days turned into weeks, the pressure mounted. One evening, Logan sat in his office, staring at the city lights through the floor-to-ceiling windows. His assistant had just left after delivering yet another report detailing the growing media scrutiny. Investors were growing uneasy, and rumors of a potential boycott had begun to circulate. A knock at the door pulled him from his thoughts. Ethan entered, his expression serious. "You've got to address this, Logan. The board is getting restless." "I know," Logan said, his tone calm but firm. "I've got it under control." Ethan raised an eyebrow. "Do you?" "Because from where I'm standing, this isn't just about you anymore. Your relationship with Sophia, it's becoming a liability." Logan's jaw tightened. "Sophia isn't a liability." "I'm not saying she is," Ethan said carefully. "But the world doesn't see it that way. And you have to decide how far you're willing to go for this." Logan's gaze hardened. "I've already decided. I'm not walking away." Ethan sighed, running a hand through his hair. "Just be sure you're ready for what comes next, because this isn't going away anytime soon." Sophia, meanwhile, was dealing with her own challenges. A threatening letter had been left at her gallery, accusing her of riding Logan's coattails to revive her image. It was the final straw. She called Logan, her voice shaking. "I can't do this anymore," she said, tears streaming down her face. "The letters, the reporters. I feel like I'm suffocating." Logan's voice was steady, but there was an edge of frustration. "Don't let them win, Sophia. That's what they want, to break you." "They're not just breaking me," she said. "They're breaking you too. Your company, your reputation. It's all because of me." "It's because of them," Logan said firmly. "Not you. Don't let their lies make you doubt yourself." Sophia's silence spoke volumes. She wanted to believe him, but the weight of the world's judgment felt unbearable. The following day, Logan made a bold move. He called a press conference, this time without Sophia. Standing before the cameras, he addressed the media's relentless scrutiny of their relationship. "Sophia Hayes is one of the strongest, most resilient people I've ever met," he began, his voice firm. "She has faced challenges most of us can't imagine, and she's come out stronger for it. The media's portrayal of her as a liability is not only inaccurate, it's unjust." Logan's words were direct, unapologetic, and powerful. He defended Sophia's character, challenged the narrative surrounding her, and called for accountability in how the media treated people trying to rebuild their lives. His statement was met with mixed reactions. Supporters praised his courage, while critics accused him of being reckless. But Logan didn't care. He had drawn a line in the sand, and he wasn't backing down. Sophia watched the press conference from her apartment, tears streaming down her face. Logan had risked everything, his reputation, his company, for her. It was a gesture of love and loyalty she had never experienced before. She picked up her phone and dialed his number. When he answered, his voice was calm, as though he had been waiting for her call. "You didn't have to do that," she said, her voice trembling. "Yes, I did," Logan replied. "Because you're worth it." For the first time, Sophia felt the walls around her heart begin to crumble. Maybe, just maybe, she didn't have to fight this battle alone. The cost of truth. Sophia sat in her apartment, her phone still in her hand after her call with Logan. She replayed his words over and over in her mind. "Because you're worth it." The vulnerability in his voice had broken through the layers of fear she had built around herself. For so long, she had believed that her past made her unworthy of connection, of love. But Logan's unwavering belief in her was forcing her to question everything. The next day, Sophia ventured out of her apartment for the first time in what felt like weeks. She pulled a scarf over her head and slipped on sunglasses, hoping to avoid recognition as she made her way to the gallery. The streets were quieter than usual, the early morning haze cloaking the town in a soft stillness. But her reprieve was short-lived. As she approached the gallery, she spotted two reporters lingering near the entrance. Their cameras were slung over their shoulders, but their alert gazes told her they were waiting for her. Sophia froze. Her heart raced, and for a moment, she considered turning back. But then she remembered Logan's words at the press conference, "Don't let them win." With a deep breath, she straightened her posture and walked toward the gallery, her steps steady and determined. The reporters noticed her immediately and rushed to block her path. "Miss Hayes, do you have a comment on Mr. Mitchell's statement yesterday?" one of them asked, his voice sharp and probing. "Do you think his defense of you will hurt his business?" the other pressed. Sophia forced herself to meet their gazes, her voice steady despite the trembling in her chest. "I have no comment. Please respect my space." The reporters continued to push, their questions growing more invasive. But Sophia didn't falter. She unlocked the gallery door, stepped inside, and closed it firmly behind her. Her hands shook as she locked the door, but a surge of pride swelled in her chest. She hadn't run. For the first time in years, she had stood her ground. Meanwhile, Logan was dealing with his own fallout. His press conference had sent shockwaves through both the media and his company. Some of his investors appreciated his boldness, admiring his refusal to back down in the face of scrutiny. Others, however, saw it as reckless. At a board meeting that afternoon, the tension was palpable. The room was filled with executives, their expressions ranging from concern to outright disapproval. Logan stood at the head of the table, his calm demeanor masking the fire in his veins. One of the board members, an older man named Richard, leaned forward, his steely gaze fixed on Logan. "Do you understand what you've done, Logan? Your decision to address the media like that has put this company in a precarious position." "I understand perfectly," Logan replied, his voice even. "And I stand by what I said." Richard's lips tightened. "You may stand by it, but we're the ones dealing with the consequences. We've already received calls from several major investors expressing their concerns. If this continues, we could see a significant drop in our stock value." Logan's jaw tightened. He knew the risks when he decided to defend Sophia, but hearing it laid out so starkly still stung. "This company has weathered storms before," he said firmly. "We'll weather this one too." Another board member, a woman named Carla, spoke up. "With all due respect, Logan, this isn't just about the company. It's about you. Your relationship with Sophia Hayes is being scrutinized by the media, and whether you like it or not, it's affecting public perception of you as a leader." Logan met her gaze, his voice steady. "What the media chooses to write about my personal life doesn't define who I am as a leader. My decisions do, and I refuse to let baseless speculation dictate how I live my life." The room fell silent, the weight of Logan's words settling over the group. Finally, Richard spoke again, his tone resigned. "We'll give you the benefit of the doubt for now. But understand this, Logan, your actions have consequences, and if this situation escalates, it won't just be you who suffers." Logan nodded, his expression unyielding. "Understood." That evening, Logan returned to his penthouse, exhaustion settling over him like a heavy cloak. He poured himself a glass of scotch and stepped onto the balcony, the city lights stretching out before him. The magnitude of the day's events weighed on him, but his resolve remained unshaken. His phone buzzed on the table behind him. When he picked it up, he saw a message from Sophia. "Thank you for believing in me. I'm trying to believe in myself too." A small smile touched Logan's lips. It wasn't much, but it was a start. The next morning, Sophia decided to take a step toward reclaiming her life. She reopened the gallery, her heart pounding as she turned the sign on the door to "Open." She didn't know how many customers would come or how many reporters might show up, but she was tired of hiding. To her surprise, the day passed without incident. A few regulars stopped by, offering kind words and quiet support. Their presence reminded her that not everyone judged her by her past. By the time she locked up that evening, she felt a flicker of hope, a reminder that she wasn't as alone as she thought. Later that night, Logan called her. "How was the gallery today?" he asked, his voice warm and genuine. "It was good," Sophia admitted. "Quiet, but good. I think I'm starting to find my footing again." "I'm glad to hear that," Logan said. "You deserve to feel that." Sophia hesitated, her voice softening. "Logan, I don't know what I would have done without you. I've been so scared for so long. But you've made me feel like maybe I don't have to be." "You don't," Logan said firmly. "I'm here, Sophia, and I'm not going anywhere." For the first time in years, Sophia felt a sense of peace. It wasn't the end of the battle. She knew that. But for the first time, she believed she had a partner in the fight. And that made all the difference. A new horizon. The days after Sophia reopened her gallery were a mixture of progress and tension. While she was starting to reclaim her sense of normalcy, the outside world wasn't done with her. Articles about her and Logan continued to circulate, some supportive, others critical. The gallery remained under the occasional watchful eye of reporters, but the support from her local community surprised her. Each day, she received messages from old friends and even strangers who admired her courage. Customers came to the gallery not just to buy art, but to offer their encouragement. Slowly, Sophia began to feel a shift, a sense that her story was no longer just a scandal, but a testament to resilience. Logan was by her side every step of the way. They talked every evening, their conversations a mix of lighthearted banter and deeper reflections. His unwavering support became her anchor, a reminder that she wasn't fighting this battle alone. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of orange and pink, Logan arrived at Sophia's apartment unannounced. She opened the door to find him holding a small box tied with a satin ribbon. "What's this?" she asked, a soft smile playing on her lips. "Open it and see," Logan replied, his eyes sparkling with mischief. Sophia untied the ribbon and lifted the lid to reveal a set of professional-grade paints and brushes, each one neatly arranged. Her breath hitched as she looked up at him. "Logan, this is amazing." "Thank you. I figured you could use something to celebrate your progress," he said. "And maybe a little reminder that you're not just surviving, you're creating." Sophia felt tears prick at her eyes. "You didn't have to do this." "I wanted to," Logan said simply. "You deserve it." The next morning, Sophia decided to use the gift. She set up a canvas in the gallery's back room, where natural light poured in through a large window. For hours, she lost herself in the act of painting. Each stroke of color felt like a step forward, a declaration of who she was beyond her past. By the time she finished, the canvas held a vibrant depiction of a sunrise over the ocean, a symbol of new beginnings. Sophia stared at the painting, a sense of pride welling up in her chest. It wasn't just a piece of art. It was a reflection of her journey. As Sophia was beginning to find her footing, Logan faced his own challenges. The media frenzy around their relationship had put his company under a microscope. While most of his board members had come to accept his stance, a few remained skeptical, their concerns growing louder with each passing week. At a critical board meeting, Logan addressed their fears head-on. "I understand that this situation has put us in a difficult position," he began, his tone calm but firm. "But I refuse to compromise my values for the sake of public perception. Sophia Hayes is not a liability. She's a person. And I won't let this company contribute to the kind of baseless attacks that have haunted her for years." One of the more outspoken board members, Richard, leaned forward, his expression skeptical. "And what happens if this escalates, Logan? What happens if our investors start pulling out because they don't agree with your choices?" "Then they're not the kind of investors I want," Logan replied without hesitation. "This company was built on integrity, And I won't abandon that just to appease people who can't see beyond a headline. The room fell silent, the weight of Logan's words settling over the group. Finally, Carla, one of the more supportive board members, spoke up. "I think we've underestimated the strength of our leader," she said, her voice steady. "Logan's willingness to stand by his values is exactly why this company has succeeded. If he believes in Sophia, then maybe we should too." The tension in the room eased, and Logan felt a surge of gratitude. He knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy, but he also knew he wasn't alone in the fight. That weekend, Logan invited Sophia to his penthouse for dinner. It was their first real moment of calm since the storm began, and they both relished the opportunity to relax. As they sat on the balcony, the city lights twinkling below, Logan poured them each a glass of wine. "To new beginnings," he said, raising his glass. Sophia clinked her glass against his, a soft smile on her lips. "To facing the world together." They talked late into the night, their conversation weaving between dreams for the future and reflections on the past. For the first time, Sophia allowed herself to imagine a life where her father's mistakes didn't define her, a life where she could stand beside Logan without fear of dragging him down. But just as they were beginning to settle into this newfound peace, an unexpected call shattered the tranquility. Logan's phone buzzed, and when he saw the caller ID, his brow furrowed. "It's my lawyer," he said, answering the call. Sophia watched as Logan's expression darkened. He listened intently, his jaw tightening with each passing second. When he finally hung up, he turned to her, his eyes filled with concern. "What's wrong?" Sophia asked, her voice laced with worry. Logan took a deep breath. "There's been a breach. Someone leaked sensitive company information to the press. They're trying to link it to you." Sophia's blood ran cold. "What? How? I don't have anything to do with your company." "I know that," Logan said, his voice firm. "But they're using our relationship as an excuse to create chaos. They're saying I've been distracted, that I've compromised the company's security." Sophia felt a wave of guilt crash over her. "This is exactly what I was afraid of." "Logan, Stop," Logan said, cutting her off gently. "This isn't your fault. It's just another hurdle. And we'll get through it." The next few days were a whirlwind of damage control. Logan's legal team worked tirelessly to address the breach, while his PR team countered the media's accusations. Through it all, Logan remained calm, his focus unwavering. But Sophia wasn't so sure she could handle it. The guilt of being at the center of yet another scandal weighed heavily on her, and she began to question whether she was doing more harm than good by staying in Logan's life. One evening, as they sat together in the gallery, Sophia voiced her fears. "Logan, maybe this isn't worth it. Maybe you'd be better off without me." Logan turned to her, his eyes blazing with determination. "Don't you dare say that. You are worth every fight, every headline, every challenge. I told you I'm not going anywhere. And I meant it." Sophia's eyes filled with tears, but this time, they weren't tears of fear. They were tears of gratitude, of hope. For the first time, she began to believe that maybe, just maybe, she was worth fighting for. As the dust began to settle, Logan and Sophia stood together on the gallery's terrace, looking out at the ocean. The sun was setting, casting the world in hues of gold and pink. "Do you think we'll ever get through this?" Sophia asked, her voice soft. Logan slipped his arm around her waist, pulling her close. "I don't know what the future holds. But as long as we face it together, I know we'll be okay." Sophia leaned into him, a sense of peace washing over her. For the first time in years, she felt like she wasn't running anymore. She was standing still, facing the world with someone who believed in her completely. And that, she realized, was the greatest gift of all. Sophia leaned against the terrace railing, the salty breeze brushing her face. The gallery's soft lights glowed behind her, casting a warm ambience against the night. Logan stood beside her, his hand resting lightly on her shoulder, offering the kind of silent reassurance she'd come to depend on. "I still can't believe someone would go so far to link me to the breach," Sophia said, her voice trembling. It feels like no matter what I do, my past follows me. Logan turned to her, his expression unwavering. This wasn't about your past, Sophia. It was about greed and people trying to exploit a situation. We'll expose the truth, just like we have every other time. Sophia smiled faintly, but her doubts lingered. I'm scared, Logan. Scared that one day you'll wake up and realize I'm too much trouble. Logan reached for her hand, his grip firm yet comforting. Do you know what I've learned in all of this? You're not trouble. You're a fighter. And every fight I've had to take on for you, for us, has been worth it. You've shown me what it means to stand tall even when the world tries to knock you down. Tears welled in Sophia's eyes, but this time they were tears of relief. I don't deserve you, she whispered. Logan smiled, brushing a stray strand of hair from her face. You deserve everything, Sophia. And I'm going to make sure you get it. The days that followed were filled with intense scrutiny, but also victories. Logan's legal team uncovered the source of the data breach, a disgruntled former employee attempting to sabotage the company. Once the truth came to light, the media frenzy began to die down. For the first time in weeks, both Logan and Sophia felt like they could breathe again. Sophia used the downtime to focus on her art. She poured her emotions into a new collection of paintings, each piece a vivid representation of her journey. Logan, despite his hectic schedule, made it a point to visit her gallery every evening, sitting quietly as she worked. I've never felt this free, Sophia admitted one night as she finished a piece depicting a phoenix rising from flames. It's like every stroke of the brush is a step away from the past. Logan studied the painting, his admiration evident. You're not just moving away from the past, he said. You're redefining your future. A few months later, Sophia held an exhibition at her gallery. The event drew a crowd of art enthusiasts, critics, and supporters who had followed her story. Logan stood by her side as she greeted guests, his pride in her evident. As the night progressed, a reporter approached her, a young woman who looked nervous but sincere. Miss Hayes, do you mind if I ask you something? Sophia hesitated but nodded. Of course. How do you manage to stay so strong through everything you faced? Sophia thought for a moment before answering. I used to think strength was about putting up walls and keeping people out, but I've learned that real strength comes from letting people in, trusting them to stand by you, even when it's hard. Logan taught me that. The reporter smiled, jotting down Sophia's words. Thank you. That's inspiring. As the reporter walked away, Logan leaned closer. You're inspiring. You know that. Sophia laughed softly. If I am, it's because of you. Months turned into a year, and Sophia and Logan's relationship only deepened. The media interest in their lives waned as new stories took the spotlight. Sophia's gallery thrived, her paintings gaining recognition for their raw emotion and beauty. Logan's company rebounded stronger than ever, his leadership proving resilient in the face of adversity. One evening, as they stood on the terrace of Logan's penthouse, watching the city lights twinkle below, Logan turned to her. Sophia, I've watched you transform over this past year. You've faced challenges most people wouldn't survive, and you've come out stronger. She looked at him, her heart swelling with love. I wouldn't have made it without you. Logan smiled, reaching into his pocket and pulling out a small velvet box. He opened it to reveal a delicate diamond ring that caught the light like a constellation of stars. Sophia Hayes, he said, his voice steady but filled with emotion, will you let me stand by your side for the rest of our lives? Will you marry me? Sophia's breath hitched as tears filled her eyes. She threw her arms around him, laughing through her tears. Yes, Logan. 1,000,000 times yes. Their wedding was small and intimate, held at the same vineyard where they had first met. As they exchanged vows under the golden glow of the setting sun, Sophia felt a peace she had never known before. For the first time in her life, she wasn't defined by her past. She was defined by her choices, her resilience, and the love of the man who had stood by her through it all. As Logan kissed her, the guests erupted in cheers, and Sophia looked out at the horizon. The vineyard stretched endlessly before them, a symbol of growth and renewal. She turned back to Logan, her heart full. "This is our beginning," she said softly. "And our forever," Logan replied, his voice filled with promise. Hand in hand, they walked into their future, ready to face whatever challenges life had in store. Together, they had weathered the storm. And together, they would build a life filled with love, resilience, and hope.